So I brought also, because I always think it's easier to understand what I'm talking about if you actually get to play with things. So after the break, I set up a couple tables with some different surfaces that I prepared. You know, different surfaces that you can use as grounds for watercolors or for acrylics. I'm even letting you use my brand new Core Watercolor metallic set, which I have not even tried yet. So I brought some black paper, so that's kind of cool. And I don't know if you know it, but Diana sure knows it because she also works for Golden. We also have started, Golden also makes pan pastels now. So I brought some pastels. I even brought, I don't know, for some reason I was in kind of a metallic mood. I just felt like it was a metallic kind of day. So I brought a couple pan pastels to try and some couple surfaces to work on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you this stack of things, do a couple demos, and then kind of wrap things up. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, or we can take them at the end. And I think that introduction was something that I had written a couple years ago. It's still true. I still do stage sets for the Citadel Theater, which is in Lake Forest, and please support things like theater. I mean, it's really important to support the arts now, and they were really hit by COVID, and so just that's a really important thing to do. Not just them, but any kind of theater, music, all that kind of stuff, and. So I just gonna get started. So basically, what I'm going to talk about that's maybe a little bit different than what other people talk about is acrylic grounds and different surfaces that you can use to bring your watercolor off of paper, off of the frames, you know, I mean, off of having to frame it especially, and working on some different surfaces. Though I must say, when I do watercolor, I usually use paper, just because I'm learning and stuff like that. But these are wonderful surfaces. So this first surface is just a a wooden panel. Proud to say this, I got this at the dollar store in Waukegan. It was like $3, but nice, right?
Not linen?
No. This is just a wooden, and then I took something called absorbent ground, and I thought I had a sample of it. Maybe I do, but anyway, it comes in a jar. It's also called watercolor ground, depending on if you buy it. And I don't sell, so I'm just telling you the products because other brands are just equally good. But our absorbent ground is a product that it's thinner, and you can roll it on or you can brush it on. And I don't know where that is, but I actually brushed some on a piece of fabric because because a lot of people are doing fiber arts right now. And so I wanted to show you that one of the things that's nice about acrylic is that it's flexible, so that you can put these, so if you have a commission to do a giant watercolor painting, like 4 foot by 6 foot, to get watercolor paper would be probably pretty prohibitive. But you could buy a canvas, and then you could put one of these grounds on, and then you could put it on, and then you could do this giant watercolor canvas. So we have a lot of different grounds that we with Golden, but there's 3 that they suggest. This one is called absorbent ground. It's also called watercolor ground. If you buy it in the watercolor aisle, so which is better? They're the same thing. Buy whatever's cheaper, and essentially. It's a really pretty one, and the thing is, you get some really pretty bleeds that you don't get with other. So I'm using a mop brush just to get a lot of water down, and I'm going to use just some 3 colors of watercolor. I guess every watercolors always go. Make sure that you're working wet enough. So I'm just going to really push how wet I'm working and how the colors kind of bleed together.
Did I see that Golden has 3 different kind of grounds? 3 different.
They have 3 grounds that they use. They sell with the watercolor, and I'm going to talk about each one of them. You can also use our other grounds too, but this is the 3 main ones.
Grounds I'm talking about.
Yeah, so this is one of them. This is the absorbent ground. And you know who loves this absorbent ground are calligraphers. David. Calligraphers. Calligraphers love making backgrounds with this kind of thing. And I'm just going to maybe some paper, trying to get it so that it's even wetter. Just it doesn't. But they're really, you get these wonderful edges and bleeds with this. So I have a ton of little tiny little bubbles. They may be bubbles, but how I get rid of bubbles is I have a little spray bottle with denatured alcohol in it. Get rid of the bubbles. I think that the reason I'm getting this kind of roughness is because of I didn't prep it well enough, and so this is the the wood grain coming through. But I'm just wanting to just play with that background. Now, when this dries, which obviously since I'm using so much paint, it would take a while, but these kinds of edges are what's cool about the absorbent ground. And jump in, Diana, if you have anything to say, because I know you use this too. I'm going to just throw in, just for the sake of it, a little bit of acrylic. I use acrylic and watercolor, not interchangeably, but sometimes together. I just wanted to show you that you could do almost the same things with all those kinds of things. So basically, that's the absorbent ground, and again, you can see when you get up close, you'll be able to see just how they really make some nice edges and things like that. So I can just put that aside for now. But if I was a calligrapher, I would wait for that to dry. But I also just want to remind people that like let's say I was a calligrapher and I wanted to do something with a nib, like a metallic nib. Would I go straight on this? No, what I probably would do is I put gel or a matte medium, just to make it a surface that would be better for a metallic thing, something that's a harder. So a lot of times when you're playing with all these different surfaces, what you're playing with is the difference between hard and soft surfaces and absorbent surfaces and all those kinds of things. Now, over there, I have a bunch of, do I have here? Sorry, this is my crazy setup, but here we go. One of the, what's here? Oh, these are just some ones that I did. Again, over there you'll see. One of the ones that I love the best is the light molding paste. Samples. I also put a link to all the 3 grounds that we use for watercolor, so that you can go directly to it. So those links are on there: the absorbent ground, the light molding paste, and varnishing. I'm going to talk about that. But so I do a lot of paintings of with water in, so water and rocks and stuff like that. So sometimes I use things. This is just glass bead gel, but in this case I'm using the glass bead gel just to give me some texture. So can you imagine how in a painting that you could use that to build up some textures with?
Now the glass bead gel is a liquid that you put on?
No, glass bead gel is in a jar. It's in a clear base. And again, I put that on with a palette knife, a credit card, squeegee, any of those kinds of things. And I let it dry. But look at how cool that kind of texture is, and how you could use that in a mixed media piece, but you could also use, well, I guess it becomes a mixed media piece if you use it in a watercolor, but look at how you could use that to build up textures of rocks, to build up textures of water. So this is the glass bead gel. Like I said, I made a whole lot of different ones over there for people just to play with and try out. This is, I'm going to take this off so that we can pass it around. This is the coarse molding paste. coarse molding paste, again, there's a bunch of samples here. This is, because of the green gold, this is most likely acrylic. But this is another one that comes in a jar. It's got a silicone in it, so it's got a bit of texture to it. Why do you use these? Because you get some really cool effects. And so this is dry. This is labeled on the back when we send it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some color and then put that over it. So just to see, again, what the coarse molding paste does, because they all have a very different feel to them. Can you mix and match them on a canvas? I do it all the time, especially if I'm doing a landscape and I'm doing a lot of different textures and colors and things like that. So this is acrylics underneath, because I had it, not because of anything
So it's
profound.
transparent when it's dry, the bead?
Okay, so the glass bead gel is transparent. One of the jobs that I have is to overwhelm you with all the different supplies that we have. So these are great questions, but I'm talking about now something a little bit different. So the glass bead gel, which was the one that had, was that transparent and it's reflective and you can put that on top of things and it gives you a really cool vintage look. That one is clear. It's in a gel. Gels usually tend to be clear and pastes tend to have other stuff in them. So they've got aggregate in them, so they tend to be more white. So we have 3 different kinds of molding pastes. And again, I have some samples of all of those for you to try over there. We started with the light molding paste, and it has a very different look than it's more frosting-like. It's really pretty. It's really pretty to do a watercolor over a really built-up light molding paste surface. But you can see this one underneath it is a little bit different. This one is called coarse molding paste, and I'm going to be passing these around. We're going to wait a little bit till that one dries, but the coarse molding paste, because it has silica in it, gives you a really cool vintagey look. And it's also, this is a nice one for drawing into. This is just, cheap pastels here. But look how nice that is in terms of a mixed media piece to work with. And anything that has could I do that kind of thing over the glass bead gel? Probably. It probably wouldn't work that well, but yeah, it does.
Question, Sandy?
Yeah.
The glass bead is actually glass particles.
Yeah.
So
It is.
water medium will not absorb into it.
It's in a clear gel.
So the gel absorbs the paint.
It repels it. So gel would repel the
Do you
paint.
need to have a fixative on top?
No.
What if it got wet?
With watercolor, you need to fix.
With the watercolor, you would need a fixative. With acrylic, you would not. And I'll tell you what our fixative of choice is with that. But so I'm just kind of pointing out that they all have kind of very different looks, and you can see that they just have different feelings to them.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought a bunch of different things just so that you could maybe experience them. This is maybe even a better explanation. I think these are.
I never could get. I almost wasn't in my other things.
Okay, I'm gonna just wait a little bit so that because I don't want to because I get paint over me all the time, but I don't want you to have to get paint over you all the time. So this is a chart of the core grounds for watercolor, and it kind of gives you a feel for it. So this is the light molding paste here. This is watercolor. This is called cold press. The cold press paper. This is Arches. This is fiber paste, and this is the absorbent ground or the watercolor ground. And when you see this particular thing, you'll see that they all have very different feels to them. So you would use them for kind of different reasons. Like if you like working on a rough watercolor paper, then you would use our cold press ground. And if you like anyway, I'm gonna just send this out with all these things, and just be careful, these are damp, but they're not gonna get, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. I'll wait, but I'll send this out.
Question, Sandy.
Yeah.
Maybe someone in the room, or you can speak to whether using these different surfaces under watercolor can the painting still qualify to go in a competition then? Does Vicky need to know from
It all depends on the competition. Like TWSA, you could never use any of this stuff because it's a transparent, and they actually say in their thing, paper, no UPO, so that each club, like AWS, you can. I actually entered a black paper this year to AWS, so I'm going to see. Hopefully, black paper with more of a gouache, because AWS is also just water media. So, and actually, a lot of awards last year were like acrylics. So, but kind of used like watercolor. So it all depends on which club you're submitting to.
And it's changing, they're not getting as strict. Yeah, I think that's.
Now, I still think they want stuff put under glass. Like a lot of us are not putting stuff under glass anymore, but they still would want that. I think they still want their mat board and the glass.
But-
the show at the Antioch Gallery that's coming up, the invitational show at the Antioch Gallery, you could do any of these things for that, isn't that right, Carol?
Well, I just heard we wanted to use the bylaws
So that came this way.
and,
For the invitation.
oh, the invitational, you can, it's mixed media, you can
do
use anything, it's
any
just
of
the
these
watercolor,
things.
when it's like the watercolor. But, yeah, our shows at Antioch Fine Arts, you could have whatever medium you want.
So for our next region, I think Angie and I have left together and decided what they're saying.
It's the only thing you'll want. Yeah, follow the bylaws and know, yeah.
You just read the prospectus when you're entering a show. Just it'll be in there if you can or cannot.
Because one of the things is that a lot of artists are trying to get artwork out from behind glass so that you could, and also to preserve it. I know David uses a lot of wax on his surface, and we use something else, which I'll show you a picture of. We use a couple different things, but it's a lot of times watercolor groups specifically ask me about the grounds just because it kind of makes anything like a watercolor canvas. And like I said, what I like about it is that you could really beat up the surface if you're someone like me who just like throws a lot of different things on and scrubs and things like that. Like, you have that nice paper, and as much as you try to be careful, you sometimes get that surface off. This stuff you could really beat up. And then you can also use it to, in this case, like this particular one here is just some different grounds that you can use to draw into. So one of the things that I thought was interesting is I'll get to that anyway. So this is, and I'm sorry for you, like the problem with this is that I'm going to be sending everything this way, and by the time you guys get it, I'm going to be talking about something completely different. So don't be afraid to ask questions because, Lord knows there's a ton of questions here. So these are just kind of self-explanatory. These are different surfaces. This is acrylic. It could be watercolor. Again, you could do either one. But what having been working with watercolor a lot lately and with acrylic, I find that acrylic has kind of a harder feel. So I really like doing watercolor backgrounds and then coming in and doing, if I ever want something that's really tight, but I'm a watercolor painter, will come in with that watercolor, with that acrylic painting. So this is another example of the light molding paste that we had talked about earlier, and this is a finished piece with just layers of fluids on top of it. And so the fluids are paints that look like this, and they come in a jar, and these are the workhorses. I call that because it just like dries really fast. They're about the consistency of cream. They go on pretty flat. but they're very, so they're really nice. And I'm going to talk a little bit about another. I'm going to do this right over this. We have
acrylic you were just showing?
yes, those are acrylic. So this is an absorbent ground. This didn't do what I wanted it to do, just because I probably didn't have enough acrylic medium, so we can throw more
Was
on.
this one, the elephant was on one that you, wow.
Pretty cool, fun, right, to work with. But we do have a paint called, another kind of our paints is called high flow. And for those of you who like to work with ink, which again probably wouldn't do well in a watercolor thing, but the high flow is just a beautiful paint for any kind of ink surfaces. Look how pretty that is. Again, when it just really nice. We have a lot of very interesting new colors with our high flow paints. This is Titan Pale, look at that.
Is that acrylic or?
This is acrylic. This is acrylic over watercolor. So the background is watercolor and this is acrylic. So I just wanted to show you, and I'm sorry I'm confusing you, but I don't know, that's my job, right?
Sandy?
Yeah.
It's all water-based if you think about it. I just did a video for Watercolor Live that's coming out for Legion. And I used, of course, I use Holbein. And I basically used all their Holbein products, just same as Golden, the ink acrylic. And I used acrylic, but I use it like watercolor, so it's no different. It really is no different. You just use it. And the fluids, the acrylic fluids, those are just like watercolor. If you just add them like watercolor, basically. And you can actually make your painting look like a watercolor and nobody would ever know. I mean, you could even enter that into like
Yeah,
it shows,
exactly.
because it doesn't show any different. It's just pigment. And you're using it like a watercolor. It all depends on how you're using it. And even the grounds and stuff, I use the grounds if I do a painting I don't like. I just put ground, I take the absorbent ground, I use golden absorbent ground, and I just put it right over the painting and then start a new painting, because why waste the paper? You can just put it right over it.
And the watercolor ground is very similar in looks to a watercolor paper. But more than almost anything else, I think the absorbent ground is.
Like Sandy said, if you need a big, huge painting, I had to do a big, huge painting. Paper only goes so big, it's elephant sheet, and you can't go any bigger than that, really, except for if you do the roll of paper. But just take a board and put absorbent ground on it, you got a big, huge sheet.
And I can't even always tell what's watercolor and what's not. I mean, so I have been doing, this is just some watercolor that I've been doing.
What'd you say?
I
Is
want
it-
to ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you notice, Dave, any difference between watercolor ground, I know what it is that Dave did before, the effect of watercolor paint on that versus actual watercolor paper? Does it behave a little differently?
Yes.
A little bit.
It does, yeah, okay,
It's harder.
harder, yeah.
It's harder, but it's a soft one. So that's why I brought these samples for you guys to play with and stuff like that. This is just a watercolor painting that I brought in just to show you kind of what our core does. But
Even different papers act differently too, just like a different kind of paper, basically.
Sandy, what's the difference between ink and acrylic?
the base.
What about your brushes? Do you have to worry about
Yeah.
watercolor brushes mixing acrylic?
So yes, so I'll tell you what I use, and I know David is really an expert on this too. But I work with silver brushes. I use Golden Natural and Black Velvet for my watercolor brushes, and I like for the watercolor brushes. I like to either have all natural bristles or a mixture of the natural and the synthetic bristles, and I like them to be relatively soft. Like this is like a nice big watercolor brush. I don't mix them. I do not let anybody put acrylics in my watercolor brushes. For my acrylics that look like watercolor, it depends on the kind of paint that I'm using. So the high flow is pretty gentle because it's so thin. This is the one that's like the acrylic ink. The fluids, I like bristle on. which is a harder, it's like has more of a snap to it. It's kind of my personal style, so I like to work with something like that. But I don't mix them. You could, but I don't. I like that mixture of, I like the softness for watercolor of the natural bristles. This is black gesso. So that's another ground that I could use to work with watercolor. Again, if you're going to work with something, but look how beautiful that looks on the black gesso. Black gesso, like regular gesso, has marble dust in it, so it has a very hard surface. So it's almost like working, like I'm sure a lot of you have worked with Yupo. So Yupo is like a tough surface, so the paint kind of flies around on the top of it. So a lot of times that's what you think about when you're thinking about how you're preparing the surface. So with the black gesso, you get some really nice things, but I have that.
Question?
Yes.
Can you use pastel on the black gesso?
Yes. I'll show you in just a minute.
Yes.
Yes. So this is my new set of, oh my gosh. Like I said, I don't even know much about these because I have never worked with them before, but I just got for Christmas from Golden, we get personal paint. It wasn't a present, it was like we earn it. But I just bought myself probably would be better on paper, but anyway, these are you guys can do a better job than I can, but these are the new metallic and interference. It's a nice little set. Anyway, but so can you do pan pastels? So we have our pan pastels. So I'm just throwing a bunch of different things at you, but pan pastels do great on a black gesso surface. Also, regular pastels do. But the surface that I like is to use pan pastels on something called micaceous iron oxide, which has a little bit of a tooth to it, and then you can really get some really beautiful drawing kind of things going on. But again, this is another surface that you could conceivably use any kind of media on. And this is watercolor, believe it or not, on that. And because it has a tooth to it, it really takes it well. So this is a nice way to kind of incorporate mixed media. And look at the difference. I mean, I think that you can really see the difference between the micaceous when you see it up close and the black gesso. But the black gesso is beautiful for, all kinds of different things because of that slip to it. So, but in terms of like fixing it and stuff like that, it's so much easier to fix it if it's on a surface like the micaceous, because it really barely comes off. So this is micaceous iron oxide.
What kind of watercolor did you use there? The blue.
The blue, it's just the core. It's just.
Or what color?
It is cobalt teal.
Cobalt.
Cobalt what?
Cobalt teal.
Teal.
Yeah.
It must be semi-opaque or opaque?
Trying to see if it has a chart. Yeah.
The way it showed up on the black? Yeah.
It's wet.
It's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Core is
I
pretty.
have a question.
Yeah.
I have old, very old black gesso, golden. So is this a new
No.
version? Is it the same from 10, 15 years ago?
Same. I think it's the same formula.
Okay, thank you.
I know that's an insane amount of watercolor, but still, look at that. Isn't that cool? So you can see it really does hold well to that kind of a surface.
Is it like a jar of pastel, or what is that? It's like a dust, it's like pigment?
You guys, this is pan pastel. This is really exciting. Golden bought this last year, and it's pastel it's like almost like a makeup container, and it's very finely ground. And it is so fun to use to put in backgrounds. It is just there's no filler in it, but you can just
Is it just pure pigment?
it's just pure pigment, really finely ground, and it's just gorgeous. And it's real. What you would love about it, Dave in particular, is that it's really easy to throw in a background really quickly, and it's just gorgeous. So I
Can
just
you use it like a watercolor if you?
you can put it on with a paintbrush. You can
A
put
wet one?
no, you usually put it on with a sponge. But I oftentimes put it on. There's a sponge over here someplace, but I oftentimes I do figure drawing. Cece knows I do figure drawing, and I use pan pastels a lot to put my backgrounds in, and I just use a paper towel and brushes. But it comes with all these different cool sponges and stuff like that. So if you've never tried it, I brought some for everybody to try, and it does well on a lot of just interesting surfaces, you know. So basically what I'm trying to talk to you about today is just different surfaces for paint. So, but black gesso is a nice one. Micaceous is one of my very, very favorites just because I love the tooth to it. It's like kind of like working with pastel ground. But I've been doing a lot of paintings, both with watercolor and with acrylics on plexiglass. So this is pastel ground on plexiglass, and if you hold it up to the light you can see through it, and it's like a thinned out version of pastel ground. And then I come all different ways, like this is reverse painted a little bit, but this is this is acrylics. It could be, I also do watercolor, and then because it's got a tooth to it, I also come in with colored pencils. And then I have a little my friend John makes like these little wooden pieces with a little groove in, and I just stick it in there, and that's how I show them. But I really love working on the plexiglass. I think it's a very interesting surface to work on. So what else do I have here? Here's another set of working with just some different things on plexiglass. Pastel ground, micaceous, all those kinds of things. And I'm going to just take those. And since I've made a complete mess of my watercolor plate, I'm going to, where did I put that? Why would I work with pastel ground on plexiglass? First off, because I love all that experimentation, but because I like the transparency. So this is watercolor over all these surfaces.
Sandy?
Yeah.
What was that, surface that you're talking about that I can't understand the word, like mication or something?
Oh, micaceous. So think of it as micaceous. So it's so we have only what's happened is that over time people are trying not to poison you. So they have taken things out of paint that aren't good for us, like lead, right? So we only have 2 metallic paints in our line. And one is stainless steel, and the other one is micaceous iron oxide. So it's a naturally occurring pigment that's mica-based. And it's one of my favorites. I love it.
So is that a ground or is that a paint?
It's actually technically a paint, but you could use it as a ground.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
So, you know, it's like when you get to these technical things, but look how much fun you could have. And again, since David is my victim because I've seen so much of what he's done, he does a lot of paintings on plexiglass, and it's just so fun to work on.
And you might wonder, Sandy, let me just interject, you might wonder why would you buy plexiglass? Well, maybe you have some, but you have a framed painting and the plexiglass is scratched or something. You can take it out and coat it with these surfaces and have a nice experimental piece then to use that plexiglass surface instead of just throwing it away.
And frame shops oftentimes will throw out their little corners of that, and then also, hardware stores and things like that. You can make deals with them. Yes.
Can you use the plexiglass and the medium that you're using on there as a monoprint?
You could.
You could.
I usually use gel plates, but you could use it. I also oftentimes will use ampersand panels to make monoprints from. But I really love the jelly plates, so. And my friend does a lot of watercolor jellies with the jelly plates. Does everybody know what a jelly plate is? It's that kind of rubbery stuff.
No.
It's like a gelatin, but it did used to be a gelatin, but now modern days they've made it so it's a synthetic, and it comes like all different sizes, but it's yay thick, and it's to do monoprints on, and super fun. If you guys, I gave you that paper, and if you have any questions and things like that, I really answer questions, and what I can also do is send you links to things so that I can kind of turn you on to all these different things, because that's what I feel a lot of my job is just getting you enthusiastic about different things. And so anyway, so this is glass bead gel, micaceous iron oxide, pastel ground, just different kinds of ways I can work with plexiglass.
Can you put the absorbent ground on plexi?
Yes, but it would be white,
Yeah.
so it'd be a little transparent. But that's why I think the pastel ground might be a better surface.
Okay.
So, do I dare send this? Do you want to? Think it, just don't touch the center, and it's pretty good, right?
Hold it from underneath. Break anytime you're ready to.
Okay, I just have a couple more things, and then we're gonna break. And then I'm gonna have you play with these things, and it will make so much more sense, and it'll be fun. But this is another one of the ones that I really made a whole lot of different surfaces to try. And this is called coarse pumice gel, and this is even thicker, and you get even more texture with it. Again, this is watercolor still. It looks like cement when you take it out, but when you start playing with it, it really pixelates, and it gives you really cool surfaces. So that's that. Let me see what else I have here. Fiber paste is really wonderful. That's the one that's like rough watercolor paper. This is a fiber paste skin. Anyway, I made a circle out of the fiber paste, and it just has a pulpy paper look to it. This is, you know what, I'm gonna stop there and just let you kind of play, but I gave everybody a little set of core here that you can open up, and inside is a piece of paper and a sample of the core. So, oh yeah, so I'm sorry, so this is the paper, a sample of the core. I brought in some nice brushes. I brought in both watercolor brushes and which please don't use with the acrylics, and then I also brought the acrylic brushes in, which you can see the acrylic brushes are not as well taken care of because I get beat up. But I think that I'm going to end there, and then let's take a break, and then we'll let you play a little bit.
Can you reiterate what ground you used on that plexiglass right there? People were asking.
Isn't that pretty? That's pastel ground. And it's a beautiful surface also to do pastels on, and also to do pan pastels, colored pencil. But that combination of plexiglass and pastel ground, and then either watercolor and color pencil is just awesome. It's really fun to work with.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
All right, let's take a break.
Color group is what we do for varnishing watercolor. And someplace in here is my sample of that. We have a product that we use called archival varnish. You have a link to that on your paper. It comes in either here it is. So this is, I don't know if you can see, but this is a example of that. This side is without varnish, this side is with varnish. This is 2 or 3 coats of varnish on. So this is gonna make it light fast. This is gonna make it as a finished piece. So if anybody wants, you can take a picture on the back, but I do have a link to that on that paper. There's a lot of different products, in case you can't tell, there's a lot of different products that Golden makes, and there's products that you can get where you can also do things that make it more like an encaustic-y kind of finish, but this is with an acrylic product. Or you can do like David does, which is use wax. And we don't make wax, so ask him. Yeah,
Spray or brush?
it's spray. And it's such a great question because it's a mineral spirit acrylic. So what that means is because it's mineral spirit, it's not going to disturb the watercolor underneath it. And what I usually do is a couple layers of a gloss varnish because I like how it separates the colors out. And then whatever finish that I want, if I don't want it as glossy, then I'll put this, like a semi-gloss or a flat on top or a matte. So
Are they all archival varnishes, just different textures? Like
yeah,
gloss?
just different sheens,
Different
right?
shades, yeah.
And there is a link on that. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send Angie what I handed out to you, but you'll also get it in an email form. And when you get it in an email form, then you can just touch a button and then you don't have to like type it all in, it's a little bit easier, right? At least it's easier for me. I tried to figure out how to do a QR code. I was up like till 1 o'clock last night trying to figure out how to do that. Couldn't figure it out, so that's why I sent those papers and stuff like that. So just one other thing that people ask me questions about, people ask me a lot of questions, which are great, but is there's something called a fine line applicator, which is a fun thing to use with acrylics. Comes empty like that, and I either use it with high flow or fluids, and it gives you a like a fine line. Like this was actually done with a fine line applicator on fabric. I was talking to people, some of the things we have a bunch of different stuff, and we have some products that make things like fabric. So I've been teaching a lot of fiber groups, and so this is that, and you get that product online, like at Amazon, and somebody was showing me. I had a sample of that here with some what I call the scenic writing, but I could do it here.
It's right here.
Oh, okay.
It's right there.
And I can show you this. This is the hardest part of this is it has like a needle nose. It's like, but a lot of times you watercolors are used to doing friskets with this, right? But it really is cool because it gives you a nice line, and that line will stay raised. And what I like about it, because I'm such a geek with plexiglass, is it does really well on plexiglass. It will stay on plexiglass. So that's called a fine line applicator. I will send you the information on that. You can get it in 18 gauge or 20 gauge. I think that the 18 gauge has too big of a hole and it's too messy, so I like the 20 gauge. And this is a great thing to do if you want to drive yourself crazy trying to get this in.
The lid back on.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad and it's so messy and it's.
Does that come filled with paint or you
No,
fill
it comes like this.
empty, so you fill it?
But we also have, which I should probably talk about, I'll do this later. We also have we also can make markers out of your your fluids or your high flow. So this would come empty as well, and this has some fluid. I think it's fluid, but look at that. Well, of course, it's not going to work just because I'm trying to show it. Hold on a second, I'll get it working. It was working. It's got a felt tip, so you just have to kind of play with it. But look how nice that is to, yeah. Tell you what I like about these is that it's great for making a quick background.
And can you wash that off? Will it wash off?
No, this is acrylic, so it's not going to wash off. And look how nice those colors are with this behind it. So I like working with these markers, again, especially if I'm getting ready for a class and I'm preparing a lot of boards. I like putting down all the backgrounds with it, but I like putting down like flat backgrounds with that. Anyway, so this is, I don't know what this is. This is called Witch's Brew. I'm not sure which company it is, but there's a bunch of different companies that make these, but there's all different kinds of things that you could do. I mean, and I think that the gist of this is the real what I was trying to do is talk about different surface preparations. So we actually have 3 of these lectures. One is surface preparation, one is the stuff that you put in the paints, and then one is on color. So we're doing our demos just a little bit. So this was all different ways that you can do surfaces, and I tried to gear it more towards you guys, the watercolor. Anybody have any questions? Good. So, yeah.
I was just looking at, your bird painting that went around, and it said to put gesso down first, and then put the surface over the gesso. Is that correct, or?
It's probably correct. If you do something, so Diana can tell me, can attest to this. Anything from the main headquarters is going to tell you the proper way to do it, because they're going to be the archival way and stuff like that. But do I put gesso underneath? No.
Okay.
But it's probably the proper way to do it. You know. So. Any other questions? No? Well, you've been great. Thank you.
A lot to take in, but thank you.
That was really fun. Thank you so much. It's so nice to see all these familiar places and all these new faces too. It's great.